What's happening, everybody? Here in the car, road tripping with my wife today, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about the verse of the day. And so I'm actually going to have my wife read it for me, and then we'll kind of dive in and talk about it for a minute.
Isaiah 40:31. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint.
So, I really love this verse. In fact, we were just talking before we started recording about the fact that different versions have a slight language difference, and the key word change is that this particular verse, which is from the English Standard Version, which I like, uses the word wait, those who wait on the Lord. But other versions use the word either hope or trust. And not that I dislike that language or that style, but there's something really unique and interesting about the word wait for me, in that I quite literally picture this order to stay in God's will, to not rush ahead, to not get impatient, but that if I stay planted within God's will, and in particular, especially for somebody like me who's a problem solver, to stay patient and not rush ahead and try and solve my own problems my way or in my timing, then I get the benefit of the rest. And it talks about being mounted up with wings like eagles. And when I posted a picture of today's verse, I used a picture of an eagle, a bald eagle. And when you really stop and stare at an eagle, there's something majestic about them. There is a raw strength, almost an intimidating strength and power, but also beauty just to that creature. And this verse suggests that if I stay patient and in God's will, that I will be given the perk or the benefit of receiving a strength that kind of allows you to soar, that allows you to pursue your dreams. Think of it as an opportunity. Maybe God doesn't necessarily just swing the door open and pour out blessings, but He gives you the strength and the ability to go chase big things. The rest of the verse talks about what? Running and enduring. Both running or walking, and basically not running out of steam, having endurance, having the ability to continue and carry on. As I meditated on that verse this morning, it really made me think of my wife's favorite verse, and I'll let her share a little bit of that verse this morning as well too, and talk about why I think it is a good bridge for what this verse is suggesting. So what's your favorite verse, babe?
So my favorite verse is Exodus 14:14, and it says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still."
And what's the context of that verse?
So that was as the Israelites were leaving Egypt and trying to just get away from the slaves and or to get away from being enslaved. And so they are being led by God, and they get right to the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are coming up on one side, the sea is on the other side. There's no place to go, and they are afraid and they are uncertain, and they're like, "God, what the heck are you doing, and why aren't we doing this faster?" They even get to the point where they decide that they would just rather go back to Egypt than have to try to figure out what God's going to do for them. And so that verse is that's when that comes into play, and and it says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need to just be still."
Yeah, and I picture in that moment encamped essentially between a pursuing army, the strongest army in the world at the time, in hot pursuit, and on the other side of you, you're boxed in by a great sea. And I feel like you probably have two natural reactions here. If it was me, if I was going to solve my own problem and rush ahead, right? I see two options, and that is one of the options that they state clearly is, why did you bring us out here to die? Let's just go back. As if that would have been an option at that point anyways. But we should have never left. Let's just go back. We were better off as slaves than dying out here in the desert. And then the other option is in that moment to try and find an escape, right? And certainly not an escape that had been presented yet, because nobody at that moment is thinking, let's just go out into the sea. And so the other option would have been to race off, to scatter, to pursue some kind of other escape plan or exit plan than what was soon to be revealed to them. But luckily, Moses convinces the Israelite people to trust in God. Not necessarily him, but to trust in God who was using Moses, and to be still. And so they practiced patience. They waited on the Lord to reveal himself. And here's the beauty of it. From that moment on, all the way to the promised land becomes a series of exercises in patience and waiting and trusting on the Lord. Both waiting for the moment when Moses would part the sea with God's help, obviously, walking through essentially an ocean, right? Essentially walking through what I was pictured trying to cross a Great Lake, for instance, here in the United States, and how unfathomable that seems. And yet, because they waited on him, they were able, despite exiting from slavery, it's not like they were in good conditions prior. They leave slavery, they begin a long journey, probably with somewhat limited supplies, although the last plague did help to shore them up with some supplies. And then God takes them through a sea, on dry ground, mind you, and he frees them from their pursuers. But the story doesn't end there. From that point on, we have decades worth of having to trust in God, to not rush ahead or to give up, but to wait on God, because it was in his narrow plan, it was in his path, that the strength and the endurance and the health and the sustenance was being provided to cross the desert, to cross this long, long journey into the promised land. And if at any point the Israelites bailed on that plan, if at any point they stepped outside of it, they tried to do things another way, tried to do things their own way, or so forth, every example of that in the Old Testament led to death and destruction. Every one. But every time the Israelites humbled themselves and gave up on their own problem solving, their own pursuit, and trusted in God, they found themselves provided for, whether it was the manna or the quail or what have you. Their shoes did not wear out. Their bodies did not wear out. Their clothes did not wear out. They never went thirsty. They never went hungry. They made it. And they made it well. And that to me speaks to this verse. It was true back in the Old Testament. It is true today. If you can trust in the Lord, stay in his lane, stay in his plan, don't fall back, don't give up, and don't rush ahead, you will find your blessing. You will find the endurance and the strength and godly support, if you will, to pursue your dreams, to pursue what God has called you to, no matter how crazy it seems, and ultimately to find yourself in a place of hopefully success and hopefully an incredible journey along the way. So that's the message for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Glad my wife got to be here and to jump in on it as well. Anything you want to end with?
Nope. I think I'm good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.